And welcome to the NFL Mocks podcast. George Stockberger here, and wow, what a crazy night tonight in Chicago. So many things happened, and we're going to get down and talk about all of them. Obviously, the big story was Laremy Tunsil, offensive tackle from Ole Miss. We thought he might be the first overall pick, but then all of a sudden, he starts sliding and sliding, all because of a couple pictures of him that ended up on Twitter, him using marijuana, something that teams sort of knew about, but when you have a picture to put to the situation, that really turns your situation around, and he kept sliding and sliding and sliding. So Laremy Tunsil, he ends up all the way down to the Miami Dolphins. They get a steal in Laremy Tunsil after trading down with the Philadelphia Eagles. So the Miami Dolphins, a team that you look, and Ryan Tannehill got sacked a lot. He's been sacked 20 more times than any other quarterback since he's gotten into the league. And getting a guy who was supposed to be the first overall pick in Laremy Tunsil, that was a crazy, crazy moment that we saw at the draft. Nothing that we've ever seen before. And another situation, which was maybe not as surprising, but Myles Jack, a linebacker from UCLA, completely falling out of the first round as teams are worried about his knee injury. Rumors that he might need microfracture surgery to repair his knee, I should say. So Myles Jack, a guy who would have been a top 5 pick, a really good athlete, won offense and defensive freshman of the year at UCLA. Him falling out of the first round was something that I don't think anyone could have predicted. So the big stories tonight are Laremy Tunsil and what happened with Myles Jack. But we're going to go through and break down every single pick, all 31 picks tonight. Some really good, some pretty bad. So first start out, Jared Goff, the pick that we all assumed came true. He goes the Los Angeles Rams, the next franchise quarterback. California kid, I think it's a decent pick. He's not my favorite quarterback in this class, but obviously Los Angeles needed to make a splash, and they go with a hometown kid. After that, Carson Wentz, North Dakota State, goes to Philadelphia, who also traded up. This is a guy that the team obviously fell in love with, and the media around here was insane with Carson Wentz. They're calling up old high school coaches, some of his former receivers, trying to learn as much about the guy because, coming out of North Dakota State, there's not much tape that people can watch on a regular basis like Alabama or Ole Miss or Ohio State. So there wasn't a lot of information on Carson Wentz. And also in Philadelphia, Sam Bradford is still wearing midnight green, or at least he's supposed to be. Eagles have said they're not going to trade him. They want him to be the bridge guy and let Wentz develop under him for a little bit, just as now current head coach Doug Peterson did for Donovan McNabb when he was drafted out of Syracuse. So the quarterbacks go 1-2, and then the San Diego Chargers, they stay in place, and they go with Joey Bosa, the defensive lineman out of Ohio State. Reports are that their owner talked to Urban Meyer for over an hour last night about Bosa. Bosa, a guy, I don't know if he's going to be as dominant as people say, but it definitely is a good situation for the San Diego Chargers. They needed help pretty much everywhere on defense. They didn't have much of a pass rush last year. So they get Joey Bosa at the 3rd overall pick. Bosa, a guy people thought might be the first overall pick, but there's been some character concerns. Obviously, he didn't run as well at the combine as people expected, but Joey Bosa is going to be one of the next great pass rushers, hopefully, in San Diego. So that's another guy we're going to have to keep an eye on. And then the Dallas Cowboys, what were they going to do? Were they going to go quarterback? Were they going to go with a defensive stud in Jalen Ramsey? Or were they going to take the flashy running back? And guess what they did? Typical Jerry Jones fashion, they went with a flashy running back. Ezekiel Elliott is now wearing the Dallas Cowboys star. Obviously, the best running back in this class has pretty much no injury concern. So definitely something when you look at Darren McFadden or Alfred Morris, that was something that they had with those guys So Ezekiel Elliott going to the Dallas Cowboys is going to be scaring Philadelphia, New York, and Washington for years to come. And then the Jacksonville Jaguars get very lucky with the 5th overall pick. Jalen Ramsey, another hometown guy, goes to the Jacksonville Jaguars. This guy, he's probably going to play corner, could have played safety, but Jalen Ramsey, one of the best talents in this draft, falls to 5, and the Jacksonville Jaguars are very happy to snap him up. And then this is where it got interesting. With the Laramie Tunsil situation, the Baltimore Ravens were up, and they went with Ronnie Stanley, a guy who I'm not as big of a fan of, but the offensive tackle from Notre Dame goes 6th overall. There was some hype about him leading up to tonight, maybe some smoke screens. People said maybe San Diego would take him. But with the Laramie Tunsil situation, the Baltimore Ravens need to protect Joe Flacco coming off of that ACL injury. So what do? They take the best available offensive lineman with pretty much no off-the-field issues in Ronnie Stanley. So, again, the Tunsil situation changes the course of a franchise where Baltimore, they could have had Tunsil if he had just fallen there naturally. But because of those pictures, because of the Twitter account, John Gruden pretty much ripped social media tonight after watching what was happening to a really good player in Laramie Tunsil. So Baltimore gets a new franchise offensive tackle to protect Joe Flacco. He'll probably be replacing Ricky Wagner or James Hurst. Either one of those guys will probably be replaced by Ronnie Stanley, who will start for them in week 1. 7th overall pick, Chip Kelly. Not a very surprising pick. He goes with the Oregon guy, DeForest Buckner, the pass rusher, again from the Oregon Ducks, Chip Kelly's former team. And this is a guy, DeForest Buckner, that I really like. I like him more than Joey Bosa. I think he's going to be a better, more polished pass rusher. I think he's going to be more physical than Bosa. So, obviously, the 49ers lost a lot of guys on defense to early retirement and to injury. So, Chip Kelly, you usually think of offense when you think of Chip Kelly, but he goes, again, gets another Oregon Duck, and he's going to have a pretty good edge rusher or defensive lineman in DeForest Buckner. Now at 8, that was the Cleveland Browns, but they traded down again. And the Tennessee Titans, former owners of a 1st overall pick, they trade back up to 8. And you think maybe Laramie Tunsil's going there, a guy who was supposed to be the 1st overall pick that the Titans were destined to take. They trade down, they get a loot of picks, and they get him at 8. No, they go with Jack Conklin, offensive tackle from Michigan State. Conklin, the guy I think may have to develop a little bit if he's going to protect a guy like Marcus Mariota who's going to be running around a lot. Obviously, Conklin more used to protecting Connor Cook, more of a pocket quarterback. So we'll have to see if Conklin can sort of go into Tennessee and change that offensive scheme. Next, the Bears trade up above the New York Giants, and they get Leonard Floyd, the linebacker out of Georgia. I love this pick. He's going to play with Danny Trevathan and all the other guys, but Chicago went out and got this offseason. Leonard Floyd's going to be a very good player with the Chicago Bears going forward. And then the New York Giants with the 10th overall pick. They were probably watching for Ezekiel Elliott. They're probably looking at an offensive lineman, or they are looking at Leonard Floyd. So what do? They go with Eli Apple. Eli Apple going to the Big Apple, the cornerback from Ohio State. He has good size, better size than Vernon Hargreaves. Hargreaves, people thought was the best pure cornerback in this draft, but Hargreaves at 5'10", probably not the kind of guy you want matched up against a 6'2" Dez Bryant or 6'4" Jordan Matthews. So the New York Giants, with the 10th overall pick, go with the 6'1" cornerback Eli Apple out of Ohio State. And right after that, just as you say his name, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they traded down, and they still get their guy, Vernon Hargreaves, with the 11th overall pick, a Florida guy, staying in the state. He's going to be a very good ball hawk for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers as they continue to rebuild him and Jameis Winston, back-to-back players out of the state of Florida. New Orleans Saints, people thought maybe a quarterback develop with Drew Brees, forget about Garrett, forget about Grayson from last year, but they go with Sheldon Rankins, defensive lineman out of Clemson. I think they needed to continue to bolster that front seven. They obviously went with Stephon Anthony from Clemson last year. They also got Haloe Kikaha a little bit later in the draft to play linebacker. So continuing to build up that defense in New Orleans. And then with the 13th overall pick, after trading out with Philadelphia, the Miami Dolphins get the best player in the draft from an on-the-field perspective in Laramie Tunsil. So what's he going to be doing? He's going to be protecting Ryan Tannehill, hopefully for years to come, because Tannehill, people had a lot of hope in, and obviously got a huge contract last year. So hopefully if the off-the-field stuff with Tunsil can sort of, cool down just a little bit. There were some concerns about marijuana, also him taking money from a coach because he needed to pay his rent. That's something we're going to have to keep an eye on. But Oakland Raiders with the 14th overall pick, people thought definitely take a defensive back, but not this guy, Carl Joseph out of West Virginia, a guy who probably would have been worthy of this top 15 pick if he had not torn his ACL when he was with the Mountaineers. So definitely an interesting pick for the Oakland Raiders. Number 14, Carl Joseph, definitely a physical safety. He's going to be replacing a legend over there in Charles Woodson over in Oakland. And then Cleveland Browns, they traded down twice in this draft, and they get Corey Coleman, the wide receiver from Baylor. I mean, I'm not as big of a fan of Corey Coleman as most people. I look at him sort of like Devin Smith last year out of Ohio State going to the Jets in the second round. I see him more as just a one-speed, straight line guy who's going to be a deep ball threat. I don't see him as a guy with a polished route tree. Obviously doesn't have great size. But, I don't know. Corey Coleman, he's going to be a Cleveland Brown. He's going to be, again, a Baylor receiver for the former Baylor quarterback, former Heisman Trophy winner, Robert Griffin III. So definitely the Baylor connection is going to be there. Detroit Lions at 16, sort of a pick that a lot of people were expecting. They go with Taylor Decker, offensive tackle from Ohio State, guy they need to protect Matthew Stafford if they want to be successful there. So Taylor Decker going 16th overall to the Detroit Lions. Now next, the Atlanta Falcons. They go and they get Keanu Neal, defensive back from Florida. I know a lot of Falcons fans who loved this guy before they even talked about drafting him in the first round. So he's going to be a guy going to play safety, probably a strong safety, sort of play almost also at linebacker. We'll have to see what Keanu Neal can do. Definitely not a guy a lot of people were talking about, but he's going to be definitely a physical presence for the Atlanta Falcons, who really needed some help on defense. The Indianapolis Colts at 18, they needed to protect Andrew Luck after what happened last year, so they get Ryan Kelly, a center from Alabama, one of the better, more polished offensive linemen in this class. I didn't expect Ryan Kelly to go this early, to be honest. I thought he was going to end up in Seattle, but the Indianapolis Colts, they need to protect Andrew Luck. Suffered many injuries last year when he was on the field, so definitely a good, solid pickup for the Indianapolis Colts. And then the Buffalo Bills. What was Rex Ryan going to do? Was he going to go with a guy like Noah Spence or Robert Nkemdiche? Guys with sort of off-the-field issues, but immense talent. No, he goes with Shaq Lawson from Clemson, a guy who played with Rex Ryan's son. So definitely a defensive end in Buffalo. They needed pass rush. They let some of their more veteran pass rushers go this offseason. So Shaq Lawson, now a Buffalo Bill. And the last team to miss the playoffs was the New York Jets, and people thought maybe this is where the third quarterback in this draft goes. Maybe it's Paxton Lynch. But no, it's going to be Darren Lee, the outside linebacker from Ohio State. He's a very good athlete, moves well around the field. He has good discipline, but he's got to develop just a little bit more. And I think the Jets and Todd Bowles are going to be very happy with Darren Lee in a couple years. Next up, Houston Texans. They trade up just one spot with the Washington Redskins to draft Will Fuller, a wide receiver out of Notre Dame, a guy who's going to be a pretty good tandem with DeAndre Hopkins, help stretch the field a little bit for him. Fuller, I'm a little concerned about the body catches in his hands, a lot of drops, but you know what? Houston only sends a 6th-round pick to trade up one spot. They get a pretty good wide receiver to give Brock Osweiler. And then right after that, Washington Redskins will run on wide receivers begin as they go with Josh Doctson. Josh Doctson, a guy I really like coming out of TCU. He kind of reminds me of A.J. Green, a bigger guy, really good hands, can make some circus catches. May have to add on a little bit of weight, but I think he's going to be a really good receiver. And then the big name at the wide receiver position, Laquan Treadwell, falls all the way to the 23rd overall pick, and he goes to the Minnesota Vikings. He's at 6'2", not the fastest guy, but Teddy Bridgewater will definitely be happy to have him and Stephon Diggs catching the ball for him. So now keep going through these playoff teams in the first round here. But Cincinnati Bengals, they missed out on pretty much all the wide receivers that were really worth a first-round pick. So they go with William Jackson, a position that the Bengals didn't necessarily need. They have a lot of cornerbacks, decent depth at the position, so it was a little surprising to see William Jackson fall all the way down there. And for a team like Cincinnati that doesn't have a lot of need at the position, go after him. Maybe they could have traded out, tried to get more picks, or maybe some defensive backs. But when you have Adam Jones, Drake Kirkpatrick, and possibly bring back Leon Hall, they also drafted Josh Shaw last year. Darqueze Dennard, they have good cornerbacks on this team, but perhaps they're a little leery of some of the age of guys like Adam Jones going forward, so they're drafting for the future in Cincinnati. With the 25th overall pick, we see another defensive back. Pittsburgh Steelers go with Artie Burns from Miami. Artie Burns, not necessarily a guy that you thought as a first-round prospect, but he's going to be a decent player. He may have to add a little bit of weight. He's mainly a track athlete. Has 6 interceptions last year, so Artie Burns for the Pittsburgh Steelers with the 25th overall pick. And then with the 26th overall pick, the Denver Broncos make a trade, and they acquire Paxton Lynch, the 6'7" quarterback out of Memphis. This was a really big moment for the Denver Broncos. They lost Peyton Manning. They lost Brock Osweiler. John Elway had to do something, couldn't make a trade for Colin Kaepernick or Sam Bradford, so he trades up to get the quarterback Paxton Lynch at the 26th overall pick. Lynch probably have to sit for a little bit behind Mark Sanchez out there in Denver, but he's going to be a guy who could be exciting in that Denver Bronco offense. Green Bay Packers were up next. They lost B.J. Raji. You thought maybe an Andrew Billings, maybe we get a linebacker, maybe they go with Jarran Reed or A'Shawn Robinson. No. They go with Kenny Clark, the UCLA defensive tackle. We know the Packers like drafting those Pac-12 guys, so they go with UCLA defensive tackle Kenny Clark. He's a pretty strong guy. He sheds blockers pretty easily, but he may need a little bit of work there in Green Bay, so I don't know if that was the best value. And then probably the final shocker of the night, the San Francisco 49ers trade back into the first to take Joshua Garnett, the offensive guard from Stanford. This smells like a Chip Kelly move. He loves the Pac-12 guys, but I don't know if Josh Garnett was worth trading up for. They gave up a couple picks to go up and get him, and he was a guy who they probably could have had in the second round where they were drafting. So Josh Garnett, now a San Francisco 49er, protect either Colin Kaepernick or Blaine Gabbert there in San Francisco. And then finally, with the 29th overall pick, the Arizona Cardinals get Robert Nkemdiche, a defensive lineman from Ole Miss, first-round talent on the field, seventh-round talent off the field. We don't know what this guy is going to do in the future, but We know what he does on the field, and it's pretty amazing stuff. So Robert Nkemdiche goes to the Arizona Cardinals. 30th overall. We see Vernon Butler, defensive tackle from Louisiana Tech, go to the Panthers. I was a little surprised to see him here. I thought A'Shawn Robinson or Reggie Ragland or Jerron Reed, one of the Alabama front seven guys, would end up here in Carolina when this was starting to play out. But no, they go with Vernon Butler. Decent size, not big just in terms of weight, but he is a taller guy. He has good awareness. He can knife through the gaps into opposing backfield. So definitely another scary piece to an already scary Carolina Panthers front seven. And then after trading down the Seattle Seahawks, they lost the majority of their offensive line from last year. So they get Germain Ifedi, offensive tackle from Texas A&M. Another guy he's probably going to have to develop a little. I liked more of a Jason Spriggs from Indiana for this kind of team. But, Germain Ifedi, great at getting his body turned to the quarterback and driving defenders away from the play. He plays well, good lower leg drive, allows defenders to get off the ball, and he creates decent running space. And we know in Seattle that is, a pretty run-heavy offense. So for a guy that creates some pretty good running lanes, Germain Ifedi, a decent pickup for the Seattle Seahawks, considering they traded down from their original first-round pick. So those were all 31 guys that went in the first round this year. Again, you're listening to the NFL Mocks podcast. I'm George Stockberger, and we're doing some quick NFL draft recap here. And there's a lot of guys that are still on the board. Mainly, we talked about him earlier, Myles Jack, a linebacker from UCLA. People very concerned with his knee. We'll have to see what happens to him. But, he's a guy a lot of people thought was going to be a top 5 pick. But he slides out of the first round to many people's shock. Guys who are still there, Kevin Dodd from Clemson. I thought he was going to be sort of a higher pick. I think he's a good pass rusher, can still be a very good pass rusher in the NFL. Guys like Emmanuel Ogbah, Noah Spence, definitely some decent pass rushers still on the table here. Jonathan Bullard from Florida. So definitely if teams are looking for a pass rusher, especially if you look at, say, Tennessee, where they need a lot of help on defense, they can definitely turn to him. And plus the Alabama players. We didn't even hit on Reggie Ragland. Reggie Ragland, A'Shawn Robinson, Jerron Reed, all guys that I thought would go in the top 20, top 25 of this draft. But no, they fall out of the first round. So definitely a lot of front seven guys. We may see a lot of trades at the top of the second round. Teams, they see these first-round talent players sort of fall out, especially someone like Reggie Ragland, who we thought was one of the safer players in this draft to pick, but he falls out on offense. You still got Derrick Henry there. You still got Connor Cook, Christian Hackenberg, Hunter Henry, the tight end out of Arkansas, and Tyler Boyd, the wide receiver from Pittsburgh. Those guys still on the board, as well as Michael Thomas from Ohio State and Cody Whitehair, the guard out of Kansas State. People thought if someone's going to take a guard, it's going to be him, but it ended up being Joshua Garnett, going to the San Francisco 49ers at the end of the draft. Also back on defense, we got to look at Von Bell, TJ Green, the safeties. Those guys definitely going to be someone to watch going forward. So looking at this draft, definitely we said the big surprises. We look at Tunsil. We look at what happened with Myles Jack. We look at Josh Garnett. And we look at Paxton Lynch. So definitely some crazy picks in this draft tonight in the first round. Tomorrow night, on Friday, we have the next couple rounds, and this is where I like to say the meat of the draft is. A lot of these guys, we talked about the guys who slip out of the first round, but also guys, you look at Sterling Shepard and Braxton Miller, decent wide receivers who maybe aren't as flashy, but they're going to be just as productive as some of the guys who were taken earlier this evening. Some running backs, CJ Prosise, Devontae Booker, Kenneth Dixon, definitely some running backs that people are going to take a swipe at. And again, we set the quarterbacks, Christian Hackenberg. We're going to be looking at Connor Cook. Maybe Dak Prescott squeezes in. I don't like Dak Prescott one bit. He reminds me way too much of Tim Tebow wearing him at number 15. But definitely we might see Dak Prescott slide into the second round here. So, again, if you want all the draft coverage that you could possibly need and even more, you go to NFLmocks.com. We got over 300 scouting reports. We covered every single pick tonight on our live draft tracker, a pretty amazing feat by our staff tonight. So go out and check out NFL Mocks. And thank you for listening. We'll be back again here on Facebook, on Periscope, on Twitter, and now on Instagram. Again, I'm George Stockberger. Thank you for listening to the NFL Mocks podcast.